Yo, what up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Pnoid News. Man, listen. All right. So we were talking about taxes yesterday, and I proposed a national sales tax. And believe it or not, there's actually already a proposal in Congress right now for a national sales tax. It's HR 25, right? And it's a beautiful little piece of legislation. There's only one part I kind of have a question about, and that's like what happens to people who are like subcontractors, like port drivers, Uber drivers, DoorDash drivers, people who work in the gig economy, where like basically you're an employee, but like you're kind of mislabeled as in a general thing. Like, we had to collect sales tax? And if so, does that that'll probably affect our wages? And I feel like that's terrible. You know what I mean? And that's a question that I would like to ask. But I found this video of this guy shitting on this, and it's probably because he's a motherfucking CPA in the end of the day, right? And his business would be affected by doing so. It's Brian Kim with Clear Value Tax, right? And I'll be honest with you, I went through the bill, he read the whole bill. I just got done reading the whole bill. And I grabbed some parts, so I could actually show y'all exactly what's going on, and the parts that I kind of go like, well, they Dante said, like, what about poverty? What about, like this, and what about that? Well, I grabbed a whole bunch of stuff, that I would stand here and stand here and allow individuals to go, hey, look, this is what this is. So it would actually stand here and solve a bunch of these, questions that we would all have about what would happen with a sales tax, and how it affects like larger companies and larger people who make more money rather than the poor, and how it actually, this would you'd end up basically like the poor would still like get a remittance on their fucking sales tax. But we're gonna get down to all this. Let's get into this video. We'll have a conversation about it.
I want to tell you about the new bill in Congress to replace the federal income tax with a 30% national sales tax. The bill is HR 25, the fair tax. It was introduced by Congressman Earl Carter. The bill would eliminate all federal income taxes and instead institute a 30% national sales tax. I'm going to give you all the details. Let me know what you think about this, whether it's a good idea, bad idea, or if you have mixed feelings. I'm also going to be providing you with my opinion.
I should probably keep this thing in my hand. I think it's a really good idea in the end of the day, right? Like it's a great goddamn idea. Because the way we do it now is ridiculous, and it's a complete invasion of your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights to have to be forced to stand here and like file taxes, right? As an in general thing. And you have to involve these people, which ends up, like creating whole new businesses, just like whole cloth, because the government like forces you to do nonsense, which takes away from the actual economy and takes away from your money and takes away from the business's money. And it gets like just, in the middle of everything. Like basically you have a giant middleman that we don't fucking need. And I understand, I go, oh, we're accountants, we're nerds, we like numbers. I don't fucking care. All right, it's dumb. It's a garbage ass way of doing things, right? So let's keep going. We're gonna keep listening to what he's saying.
The bill is 132 pages long, so the politicians, they actually spent a lot of time on this, and sadly, I ended up going through all 100.
Let me say this, right? There's a lot of empty space in them 132 pages, right? It's not that difficult to read. Like it probably took me about like 40 minutes. Like it's not serious at all, right? Like I went through a whole 130, bro. That was light work. Like, yo, stop whining. Like real shit.
32 pages. The bill wants to get rid of all federal taxes related to income. That means no more federal taxes for the IRS. Payroll taxes would be gone, Social Security taxes would be gone, Medicare taxes would be gone. Instead, the federal government would get their money from a 30% national sales tax. This would supposedly fund all federal spending, including Social Security and Medicare. So I want you to know this. The bill says that it's a 23% national sales tax. However, that is a lie. It's 30%. So here's why they're saying 23%, so there's no confusion. If you buy something for $100, the sales tax would be $30. However, they're saying 23% because they're taking $30 of tax and they're dividing it by the total of $130. And if you compute it like that, then yes, it's 23%. However, in reality, it's 30%. The bill says, and I quote, This will promote freedom, fairness, and economic opportunity by repealing the income tax and other taxes, abolishing the Internal Revenue Service, and enacting a national sales tax to be administered primarily by the states. So within the bill, it says that the current tax system is bad, and it gives the reasons why. I'm going to list them out for you verbatim, so straight from the bill.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about this, right? So again, like they're not wrong, right? Like they're literally not wrong in the end of the day, right? Like this stands like the IRS and like the entire system is completely garbage and corrupt. And I think 30% is a little high, but like I don't think they're actually going to capture 30%. And this is 30% on like everything, like this is goods and services. Now, this does not fucking cover things like rent, right? You know what I mean? Because like actually this is something that you probably have a question about, you know what I mean? But what it does cover is things like stocks and bonds. So when like these rich people buy stocks and bonds, they're going to pay 30% on top of what the fuck it is, you know what I mean, that they actually like already pay for them. Right. So you're capturing a whole new set of income. This is actually like more progressive than like our tax system is today. Right. Because like progressives are like, there should be a transaction tax on everything. Like, yo, legitimately, like this is a real thing. Like, yo, they would tax fucking, you know what I mean, stocks and bonds at 30% when you fucking purchase them. So yes, rich people would get hit with this fucking tax harder than poor people would. Right. This is highly important to understand.
The bill says congressional findings are that a federal income tax retards economic growth, reduces the standard of living of the American public, impedes the international competitiveness of the United States industry.
I mean, let's be honest about this, right? They're not wrong, right? So what you're doing is you are impoverishing Americans by standing here taking away a portion of their income until they're like 65 and then giving them like a small portion of their income back, right? And that is, you know what I mean, like, yo, impoverishing Americans, right? And it is getting in the way of business because in order to stay compliant with all the federal regulations and rules and income and all the nonsense, you have to hire a team of like HR people and accountants to sit here and be able to handle this. Because not only like do you pay tax for your shit, they pay tax on you too. And then they pay workers' comp tax and then they pay this. Right. And it's all completely ridiculous. And you have to register this with the fucking IRS. And then you have to file this form. And then you have to file 1099s. And you got to file fucking the 1040 forms. And you got to like just all this nonsense. Right. Which is just extra. When we could go on the other side and literally not have any of this shit. Because like when you live in like any state except I think like Delaware and New Hampshire. Right. You have to pay sales tax. Right, like everybody in Pennsylvania pays sales tax for like everything that they fucking buy, other than like food, right? So like every store already has sales tax like counted up, right? It's already like all these mechanisms are already in place. It's just the amounts would change that are collected in these things, right? So it would be much easier to do all this on the back side, and it wouldn't be intrusive into your life with you having to file and do all this nonsense and da-da-da-da, you know what I mean, blah, 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 blah. Let's keep going now.
Reduces savings and investment in the U.S., lowers productivity, imposes unacceptable and unnecessary administrative compliance costs on individuals and businesses, is unfair, is unequitable, intrudes on privacy, impedes upward social mobility. The bill also says findings related to federal payroll taxes raises the cost of employment, destroys jobs, causes unemployment, disproportionately impacts lower income Americans. So as you can see, it's talking very negatively about the current federal income.
Well, this is like all these things are true, right? Because like what ends up happening is with lower income Americans, when you have these things set up, it's taking away. So like, say if you want to be able to hire like 4 or 5 guys at, you know, $10 an hour, right? But if it's for every one guy, it costs you, you know what I mean, like, you know, $2 or $3 an hour to be able to like keep them employed, because now you have to have like an HR agent or an accountant or whatever it is, right? Like you can't hire that 5th guy, right? You can only hire 4. So like you are affecting lower income Americans because like they're not able to work. Imagine if like you could just like, hey man, I need your help to do something for me. You know what I mean? And like you just hire that fucking dude for the day or whatever it is, right? And like they go on about their business. And there's none of this nonsense like involved or like, fucking whatever. Or if like say like, you want to sit here and have I don't know, like, like you want to like you're running a business and you need a guy to come in and sweep the floors for $8 an hour. You know what I mean? He's your local drunk or whatever. Right. And you can give that guy $8 a fucking hour to sweep your fucking floors as an employee, and there's no overhead on him. It's just the $8 an hour. That's it. There's nothing the fuck else you have to worry about him for, other than maybe like, having like, I don't know, insurance on him or whatever, because like your business insurance, that type of thing. Right. And that's the beauty of this type of tax system, to where like you can just go and work. There's no like nonsense behind things. There's no like garbage. You get rid of all like the government involvement with your fucking business and like all the accounting shit. You're eliminating all that between like Americans and regular Americans, right? And then once you have like the ability to do these type of things, now when you actually like go and you get a job, you get the whole paycheck, right? You don't like, if I told you that I was going to pay you $73,000 a year, in your head real quick, how much are you actually bringing home? Do you know? Most of us don't, right? This is the problem, is that you can just brag and go, I get $73,000 a year, right? And then like you stand here and go like, how much of that are you actually taking home? What is it, 50, 48, 62, 59? Nobody knows, right? Legitimately. And then like, how much you're going to get a refund? Do you know? No, right? Imagine like you can negotiate for a wage, and that's the wage. Like, this is the beauty of this type of system.
Tax. So here's how it would work. The federal government would work with the states. Businesses would need to collect and send in the sales taxes. And for doing so, businesses would be paid for it. A business will be compensated 0.25% of the sales tax sent in. So that's a quarter of 1%. Businesses that fail to comply could possibly be charged criminal penalties. So let me give you some of the quotes from the supporters. These are from politicians. Congressman Earl Carter said, and I quote, "Instead of adding 87,000 new agents to weaponize the IRS, this bill would eliminate the need by simplifying the tax code and encourage growth and innovation." Congressman Bob Good said, and I quote, "I support the fair tax because it simplifies our tax code. This transforms the U.S. tax code to a fully transparent and unbiased system which does away with the IRS." Congresswoman Kat Kamik said, and I quote, "I'm very proud to co-sponsor the Fair Tax Act. We're calling for a simplified and fair code that works for all. This fights back against the weaponization of the IRS and stops punishing those who work hard to succeed." So I can keep going on. There's a lot of quotes, but I'm going to stop here. Okay, so if you couldn't tell, if you didn't figure it out by now, this is a Republican bill, and the Democrats are completely against it. Congressman Don Bayer.
Well, of course the Democrats are against it, right? Like the Democrats are going to be against this bill just due to the fact that like, you're taking away their power to be able to like stand here and pander to motherfuckers, right? To go like, hey man, we're going to give you a tax incentive for this or whatever the fucking nonsense is, right? And it's dumb. Like legitimately, like it's like what we're doing is you're taking power away from like, your legislature. And that's a good thing. You're legit. That is the best possible thing that you could ever do, is take the power away from these worthless pieces of shit and put it back in the hands of the people. Like you're not even like, you're just basically just eliminating that power. Like you don't get to play with that box anymore, right? You're like, no, you don't get to play with that. That's just, no, that's no longer yours. And then like, now all of a sudden they have to actually like either legislate or be, be shown to be completely and utterly feckless. That's the reality of this.
Said about the Republicans, and I quote, "They repeal taxes on billionaires while you pay 30% more for gas, food, and so much more." Congressman Chris Murphy said, and I quote, "Inflation is falling. Feels like the right time for the Republicans to push a new national 30% sales tax." So Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal said, and I quote, The plan slashes taxes for the richest Americans and puts that burden onto poor and working class families. President Biden said,
Yeah, all right. So like let's talk about this, right? Intangible things, right? You know what I'm saying? Let's read this. It said the term intangible property includes copyrights, trademarks, patents, goodwill, financial instruments, securities, commercial paper debts, notes and bonds, and other property deemed intangible at common law. The Secretary by regulation resolve differences among the provisions of common law of the states. Right? That's the Treasury Secretary. Right? It's very simple. Like they will tax them. They will actually be paying taxes now. This is very simple. Like if you do this, now the rich will pay their share of the fucking tax burden. Because right now what they do is they take out a loan against the money, right? Or the assets that they have, you know, their stocks and their bonds and all these type of things, right? And then as they sell off their fucking bonds, they pay back their fucking loan with that money and they write it off and it's a fucking wash. Right? And they don't pay any goddamn taxes. This is forcing them to pay taxes by the transaction fees of them purchasing stocks, of them selling their fucking stocks, of them selling their fucking bonds, of them purchasing goods. Because it's not like they don't purchase shit. You go, oh, they only purchase the same amount of refrigerators that we all do. Yes, but they also purchase yachts and jets and jet fuel and fucking paper and fucking housing. And they pay for fucking their lawn care. And they pay for this and they pay for that. Right? And literally, they would end up having to pay tax for all of the things that they are doing. Let's keep going.
and I quote, "Let me be clear. If any of these bills make it to my desk, I will veto them. I will flat veto them." So that's the bill, and that's what the politicians are saying. Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm going to give you my opinion, and I'm going to tell you the good and the bad. But first, I want you to know this. A lot of the states, they get a lot of their money from state sales taxes. A lot of localities, too. So this national sales tax, it would be on top of the pre-existing state and local taxes. Therefore, sales taxes could be as high as the 40% range in many areas, depending on where you live. So to me, this sounds ridiculously high. It's crazy. Another thing is that when you buy something in most states, you pay sales.
Yeah. But like, okay, so here's my problem with this mentality, right? So for the average person, the average wage earner in America, at minimum, a quarter of your income is spent on your housing. And this takes that off the table. Right? So when you get your check is untaxed. And then you're paying for a quarter, a third, a half, depending on where you live. Now, you know how much rent is and fucking property and shit, right? That's not taxed. That's an important mentality, right? So if you're paying for rent, you're not paying taxes on that, right? Because like these things here would be exempt, right? This is why I already showed you, right? I mean, this fucking rent thing right here, right? And I mean, so, okay. Certain types of property. The term does not include tangible property or rents, leases of any term thereon, real property or rents or leaseholds of term thereon, and computer software, right? So like all of these things would be non-tax. So therefore, you wouldn't actually like be paying, 38%, or 36 as it would be here, right? Because we have a 6% sales tax in PA, right? You wouldn't be paying 36%. You would be paying, and by the way, that 6% for our state does not include like things like food and clothes, right? Because PA is not going to raise, go, oh, well, it's the feds are going to tax it. We're going to tax it. No, like PA will just be like, oh, just gonna keep doing what we're doing. So therefore, now your food's off the table, your rent's off the table, your clothes are off the table, right? And you're going to pay 30% for your food and clothes, but let's be honest here, like $100, it's like I'd spend like $150 a week at the store, so call it $50 extra. That's, it's $50 a month or $50 a week in taxes. It's not terrible. And gasoline's already, like the feds are already taxing gasoline, and so did the goddamn fucking state, right? Our state has a ridiculous tax on fucking gasoline, right? These type of things, like, yeah, it would affect you, but that's just like your car goes up 30%. Say if you have a $50,000 car, you're going to pay an extra 15 grand for it, so it's a 65 grand. Like, yeah, that loan payment goes up, but you know what I mean? Like, these are items that you were going to buy anyway, right? At the end of the day, and it's you're gonna end up financing that the fuck out, and it's gonna be offset by the fact that like you're not paying tax on the rent, and you're keeping your entire fucking paycheck, right? Like your whole check is yours, so you don't have any of the nonsense coming off the top. You don't have to worry about that shit. You're going to be doing way better off in the end of the day. And then on top of that, like, shit, you start setting up some local fucking, like, like food production, and you can just say, fuck the tax altogether. You know what I mean? You start setting up like some, like, hey, man, the guy down the street, you want to change my oil for me? Like, just straight fuck the tax man altogether. Like, yo, this is amazing, right? Now, like, you're getting away from all this. Like, you're just basically like, you can divorce the government as in general thing. Like, you can go now, like, you could just basically go, hey, man, I don't need any of this stuff. Let's keep going though.
Taxes on goods, but not for services. For some services, yes, you will pay a sales tax, but in most cases, you don't. This national sales tax, it would be applicable to goods and services. So for example, if you have a babysitter and you agree to pay your babysitter $50 and you give them $50, they're going to be like, hey, you forgot to pay me the extra $15 for the national sales tax. And then you're going to tell your babysitter, I'll just pay you cash. Let's just forget about the national sales tax, okay? And then your babysitter is going to be like, no, I'm not going to break the law for you. I'm not going to go to prison. And then you're going to be like, you're not going to go to prison over $15. And then it's going to get...
Yeah, look, real shit. Again, this already happens, as it were. You know what I mean? Like, you have babysitters standing here going, like, I want unemployment since you fucking, I'm no longer babysitting for you. Like, this happens constantly, right, already. But, like, let's keep this 100. That babysitter's not going to want to stand here and set up an extra account to collect fucking sales tax to remit to the state and then end up having a fucking business license. I've never met a babysitter with a business license. Right? Legitimately, like, because that's how this works. Like, if you want to be able to collect sales tax and like do all this type, you have to have a business license legally. Like, you cannot collect sales tax unless like you have a business license. Like, I'm pretty sure that's like a law. I'm not 1,000% sure about that. So don't quote me. Right? Right? But like literally, like that's usually how this works. Like, you have to, like, usually you don't, unless you're an actual business, you're not going to collect sales taxes, and your babysitter isn't going to fucking care. Like, real shit. This is a stupid fucking example.
Get really awkward. It's going to get confrontational, and then you're going to have to find a new babysitter. So stupid things like this will happen on top of you paying 30% more for service-related expenses. Now, a lot of people are against this bill because they say that the lowest income Americans will get hurt the most, by this new bill. But I want to give you the full picture. In our current system, lower income Americans do not pay any federal income taxes. More than 40% of US households pay zero federal income taxes. It was as high as 60% during the pandemic. So if you have some taxes withheld from your paycheck, and then you get that all refunded back to you, you didn't pay any federal income taxes. So the politicians that wrote this bill, they say they took lower income Americans into consideration. They know that lower income Americans do not...
I'm sorry, I forgot. Okay, so I actually grabbed this right. The Social Security Administration shall provide a monthly sales tax rebate to duly registered qualified families in an amount determined in accordance with Section 301. All right, so very basically put, like, they're going to, if you meet the criteria for like the federal poverty level the same way you do now, it's the same thing. Like, you don't pay any federal income tax under like $25,000, I think it is, right? Basically, what they'll do is they'll just give you a stipend, right? So that, like, like all the sales tax that you could possibly pay, right? That's not even saying that you are paying sales tax, right? Because like your rent isn't taxed, all this type of things, right? Like all the tax that you could be paying, like you would literally actually make out that you get more back, right? Because what they'll do is they're basically going to take your income, then add 30% to it. And then on top of that, qualifying children and all that shit. So like, fuck, man, you could like be making like 40 grand a year and getting a check every month, right? Where like the government goes like, yo, you're impoverished. You know what I mean? And like once a year, you just have to register and go like, hey, man, this is how much money I'm making. And on top of that, like your employer still has to report to fucking, you know what I mean, Social Security how much money you're making, right? Which is, you know what I mean, kind of important. Let's keep rocking though.
Not pay federal income taxes, so they can't just dump a 30% sales tax on low-income Americans. So to make this fair, at least in their eyes, they're offering a rebate. Each family will be eligible for a sales tax rebate each month, and it'll be based on poverty thresholds. It'll be determined by your filing status and how many dependents that you have. So if you currently don't pay federal income taxes in this current screwed up system, then you probably wouldn't pay any national sales taxes in that screwed up system. Okay, I'll tell it to you straight. My opinion is that I don't like it. Our current system is bad, and they want to replace it with another bad system. So this idea.
Well, of course he doesn't like it, right? He's a CPA. He makes his motherfucking bread and butter off of collecting taxes. Like, of course he's not going to like this. It's bad for him. It would put him out of business, right? Him and everybody like him would no longer have a job anymore. You know what I mean? There's people, you know what I mean, around in our neck of the woods, you know what I mean, who would no longer have a job anymore, you know, in our, like, people in our Discord, guys who we love, who would end up having to find a new goddamn fucking place of employment. I'm just keeping this 100% honest, you know what I mean? So we know exactly what the fuck it is we're talking about here. You know what I mean? Of course he doesn't like it.
Idea. It's not going to get rich people to pay more taxes. If you're rich, do you know what you're going to do? You're not going to go buy a $10,000 bottle of wine in New York City. You're going to go to a different country and buy that $10,000 bottle of wine over.
Well, actually, you know what? They thought of that. Right. So, tax be remitted by purchaser in certain circumstances. In the case of a taxable property or services purchased outside the United States and imported in the United States for use of consumption in the United States, the purchaser will remit the tax imposed by Section 101. So, guess what? You're still going to pay fucking taxes. You can't just go elsewhere and get shit, right? Legitimately, like, yo, anything that crosses that U.S. border is going to be goddamn taxed. You know what I mean? Like, yo, if you bought it for consumption here, it will be taxed. You know what I mean? This is highly important to understand. They're not going to be able to avoid tax. I mean, they're going to try. I got you, right? Either A, they're going to leave, which I don't fucking care. Right, leave, get the fuck out. Because guess what? You're paying sales tax on the fucking fuel in that fucking plane and the goddamn use of your fucking hangar, right? So let's keep this all the way 100, right? You're going to get taxed. Like they are now going to have to be forced to pay taxes.
We're there, and you're going to live it up. The rich, so if they want to go on a shopping spree at Gucci or Prada, they're going to go overseas to do that. And they're going to have more money to do so because they would no longer be paying federal income taxes. So also there are a ton of loopholes in.
This also does not eliminate capital gains. Right, so they'd still be paying capital gains tax. Right. So like again, all of their taxes that they already pay would still be in place. Right? And the amount of people who are making over like $1 million a year in America, it's like 50,000 people. It's like nothing, right? And I mean, as far as like payroll is concerned, you know, and most of these people are like sports athletes or, you know, actors or, you know, like CEOs or something like this, right? But again, like these people would have to pay taxes on all the things they consume. You know, their limo services, their cars, their fucking wives, and their fucking shopping, and like the goddamn kids and school and all these type of shit, right? They would still pay taxes. Don't get anything misunderstood. Like, yo, we would still grab their fucking goddamn income. Just is what it is.
In this new bill, you can open up a business, you can open up a nonprofit and be exempt from this sales tax, which is very easy for rich people to do. That's because you can get a reseller certificate and completely avoid the sales tax. So the rich people, they would be using fronts by consuming their own products, sales tax free, as samples or R&D. So this is just too easy to bypass. That's just my opinion. So in my opinion, I would say just fix the current tax code, just simplify it. Close the tax loopholes for the ultra wealthy. Just keep it simple. This doesn't have to be complicated. And I would say also have the government just balance their budget, because if they balance their budget, they wouldn't have to push so hard to get their greedy claws on our hard-earned money. That's just the way I see it. However, I am not naive. I understand that the tax code is kept complicated intentionally. I would say that we just need some honest politicians to have the courage to do the right thing. So at 30% on top of the current sales taxes and also taxing services, I do not support this bill. And let's be real, this is not going to pass because there won't be enough supporting votes in the Senate. But I thought that you should know what's going on. Again, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for all the support. Please subscribe, and I wish you a very nice day.
All right. And I feel the same exact way, right? Legitimately, that, fucking he does. I want to thank all of y'all for all your fucking support and shit, right? At the end of the day. I want to thank y'all for standing here, coming out, showing love to the channel and shit, and all y'all motherfuckers who've been rocking with me for a long time. It's appreciated. I fully support this, right? 100%. Just because, I think we need to get rid of, the fucking payroll taxes. They were put in to, help pay for, World War I and World War II. And, we're not fighting World War I and World War II anymore. They're just using our money to, piss in our face at this point. And a national sales tax, if we're keeping this all the way honest, the vast majority of us would find a way to be able to basically get around paying a lot of these fucking taxes. And anything we did buy, you just buy it. It's not that big of a fucking deal. I don't order fucking 80,000. And this as another thing, right? Legitimately, so how much stuff do you order off of fucking Amazon on a regular basis that, you're not really fucking paying taxes for, right? How much of Amazon's business is run on non-tax? They use the shit out of the U.S. Postal Service and our government services all the goddamn time, right? And they get rich off of the backs of our fucking tax dollars, and they're not paying any fucking taxes. They're standing here writing off shit on a reg. They're just writing stuff off because they have to file. This whole filing system in general is completely broken, right? It needs to be thrown away, and we need to fucking do something the hell else because it doesn't work. And if Amazon stood here and had to fucking charge an extra 30% on everything they fucking sold, guess what? All of a sudden now their business is actually generating tax revenue, and they're going to be paying for the services that they fucking use. For instance, the Postal Service. This is a much better way of doing things. 1,000%, this is a better way of doing things. Don't let other individuals stand here and fuck with you, because even if they fix the tax system as a thing, right, and simplify it, it doesn't matter. Because more and more and more and more and more of these fucking people in the United States are joining the gig economy where you're an independent contractor, and these people aren't capable of doing fucking taxes and knowing how to fucking handle other paperwork, and they're not making enough money to stack back fucking income tax. Right? They're barely getting fucking paid in the first place. They're working fucking 15 hours a day for $800 a fucking week. Right? Do you really think these fucking people are going to keep paying taxes? Do you think they're going to pay? None of them are even paying taxes as it is now. This is just reality of the matter. Look, I'm Tom Pease of Pnoid News. You'll know the deal. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm the fuck up out of here. Peace.